So I recently went through what I can only describe as my own personal nightmare. And it all started with the sound of paper tearing. A sound so small, so ordinary, but one that made my stomach twist and my chest tighten. Because when I looked up from my porch, I saw the HOA queen herself, Karen, in her powder blue tracksuit, her manicured fingers digging under the edge of one of those neon orange stickers stapled to my fence. Stickers that weren't just ugly, they were court-ordered. My proof of victory after 6 long months of hell, and she was peeling them off like they were trash. My first instinct? Rage. Every muscle in me tensed, ready to launch off that porch and stop her, but something stopped me. Maybe it was the coffee mug heavy in my hand, the steam still curling in the morning air. Maybe it was the memory of what it had taken to win those 3 extra feet of land, lawyers, courtrooms, sleepless nights. I couldn't blow it all now, not when I had her right where I wanted her. That morning had started beautifully, the kind of Tuesday where the world feels quiet and clean. My girlfriend, Sarah, had already left for her nursing shift, leaving me with the warmth of the wood porch under my bare feet and the smell of cut grass in the air. For the first time in months, I felt peace, because those orange stickers weren't just pieces of paper. They were victory. They were the final word from a tired county judge who told Karen, in no uncertain terms, that she was wrong. That my fence stood exactly where it was supposed to, hugging the roots of my old oak tree, the one she'd been trying to steal since the day I moved in. But peace, I've learned, doesn't last long when you live under a tyrant. Karen wasn't alone. Marching at her sides were her 2 sons, Chad and Brad, her personal goons. Chad, the older one, built like a vending machine with about the same amount of brains. And Brad, a little softer, but carrying the same smug grin like it was tattooed on his face. Together, they trampled across my legally affirmed lawn, crushing grass that had never looked greener to me. I didn't stand. I wouldn't give her that satisfaction. Instead, I sipped my coffee and kept my voice low. Morning, Karen. Her eyes narrowed, and her voice dripped with fake sweetness as she gestured at the orange sticker. This is a violation of Section 12, subsection C, unapproved signage. I could feel my jaw clench. That, I said, pointing with my mug, is a court order, a state judge's order, which I think outranks your little book of bylaws. Chad stepped forward, his shoulders rolling like he was looking for an excuse to throw one of those vending machine fists. You got a smart mouth. But I wasn't looking at him. My eyes were locked on Karen. She smiled, a thin, cruel thing, and with a flick of her wrist, she tore the sticker from my fence. The sound was louder this time, deliberate. She crushed it into her palm, tossed it on the ground, and moved to the next post. I could feel my pulse hammering in my temples, my blood going from a simmer to a boil. She wasn't just defying me. She was defying the judge. She was daring me to react, to lash out, to lose everything I had fought for. My temper screamed for release, but my mind stayed cold. Instead of charging, I lifted my phone from the table beside me. The red recording light glowed like a weapon in my hand. For a flicker of a second, her eyes twitched. Maybe it was fear, maybe annoyance, but the arrogance came right back. She laughed, a horrible sound, sharp and grating. You'll be receiving a fine for this, she snapped. Another for the fence, and another for hostile behavior. Then she turned, her sons flanking her, marching away like they'd just conquered something. But I knew better, because what she didn't realize was that I had filmed the whole thing. And in trying to humiliate me, she had handed me the rope I was going to use to hang her authority for good. I sat there for a long moment after they disappeared, my coffee cold, my hands trembling with fury. The peace was shattered. The morning was ruined. But beneath all that anger, something else stirred. A slow, cold smile spread across my face. Because Karen thought she had won. She thought she had put me back in my place, but she had just made the biggest mistake of her life. She hadn't just torn down a few stickers. She had declared war, and I was going to finish it. The only question left, the one echoing in the back of my mind as the camera light blinked red, was simple. How far was I willing to go? Everyone in that neighborhood had a Karen story, but no one had ever seen her rip down a judge's order with her own manicured hands. That was the thing about her. She wasn't just bold, she was reckless. And reckless people always leave cracks. To understand why I was ready to fight her, you need to understand what she really was. Karen wasn't just a neighbor with too much time on her hands. She was a predator. She'd been president of the Lakeside Meadows HOA for over a decade, not because people wanted her there, but because they were too scared to run against her. She ruled with a twisted kind of charm, always ready with a fake smile and a thick stack of fines. And she knew exactly how to break people. I'd heard the stories. The Millers who painted their shutters green. Karen didn't like the shade. Suddenly their grass was too tall, their driveway had cracks, their son's bicycle violated some made-up rule about clutter. Fine after fine until they caved. Old Mr. Henderson, my house's former owner, he just stopped fighting her. Vinny, my next-door neighbor, told me she hounded the poor man until he barely came outside. By the time he passed, she had already started pushing her property markers into his yard. That oak tree, the one that shades my porch, she had already claimed it as hers. When I moved in, I got a proper survey. Clear as day, the line was 3 feet into what she was using as her flower bed, and when I showed her the survey, she laughed in my face. "That's just a piece of paper," she said. "This has been my yard for a decade." But she didn't laugh in court. Not when the judge looked at that survey, then at the chain of title, and told her flatly that she was wrong. The gavel slammed, and in that moment the war should have ended. I had my land. She had her humiliation. But humiliation doesn't sit well with a tyrant. That was the part Sarah worried about most. She saw the toll it was taking. The lawyer fees, the stress. I could see it in her eyes when she came home from a 12-hour nursing shift and found me at the table poring over files. "Is it worth it, Michael?" she asked me once, her voice soft but sharp with exhaustion. "It's just 3 feet of dirt." But it wasn't about dirt, not anymore. "It's about not letting a bully win," I told her. My father was a union man, a shop steward. He spent his life fighting suits who thought they could crush the little guy. He taught me something simple: bullies don't stop when you give them what they want. They stop when you make them. That morning, when Karen ripped those stickers from my fence, I realized I'd been thinking too small. I thought I was just defending a strip of land. But she showed me the truth. She didn't see those stickers as a legal order. She saw them as an insult to her power. And she wasn't going to stop until she proved, at least to herself, that she was untouchable. What she didn't know was that by ripping down those stickers, she had given me leverage. Proof. Not just of her arrogance, but of her contempt for the law itself. And leverage in the right hands is more powerful than fists. The next morning, the war escalated. I'd just come back from the garage, grease still on my hands, when I saw it waiting in my mailbox. A crisp white envelope with the HOA's gold logo embossed at the top. Heavy paper. Expensive ink. That was Karen's style, drown you in paperwork that looked too official to fight. Sarah was humming in the kitchen while she chopped vegetables. I didn't want to ruin her peace, but there was no avoiding it. I slit the envelope open. The words at the top burned into me. Official notice of violations and fines. There were 3 listed. First, unauthorized signage for the very stickers she herself had ripped down. Fine, $500. Second, installation of non-compliant fencing, the one the judge had explicitly ordered me to build. Fine, $500. And third, the one that made me laugh, bitter and hard, creation of a hostile community environment. Apparently, I had engaged in threatening behavior during a routine inspection. Fine, $500. $1,500. Not for anything I'd done, but for the crimes she had committed herself. I stood in the doorway, reading it again and again, my hands shaking with anger. Sarah saw my face, came over and read it herself. Her brow furrowed, then hardened. "She can't be serious. This is insane. Illegal, right?" "Of course it's illegal," I said. My voice was low, hard. "That's the point. She thinks she's above the law." And maybe in this neighborhood she was. That night I couldn't sleep. I sat at the table with the letter spread out in front of me, and I made a decision. I wasn't just going to fight this. I was going to make an example of her. At the bottom of the letter, in neat black print, it said I had the right to appeal at the next HOA board meeting. I knew it was a trap. The board was just her hand-picked puppets. Bob the half-asleep accountant, Martha the nervous people-pleaser, Gary the smug golf-shirt yes-man. They'd never rule against her. Appealing to them was like appealing a speeding ticket to the cop who wrote it. But I also knew something else. That meeting would be her stage. She wanted to use it to humiliate me, to show the whole neighborhood I was powerless. so I decided to use it as a courtroom. That night, I gathered my evidence. A still from the video of her ripping down the stickers, her hand frozen mid-crime. The legal bill from the lawsuit she had dragged me into. And finally, the crown jewel, a notarized copy of the judge's order, the one that mandated my fence and those stickers. I slipped them into plastic sleeves, tucked them into my leather briefcase, and set it on the table in front of me. It didn't feel like paperwork, it felt like a weapon. The meeting was a week away, and for 7 days I prepared myself not for survival but for war. Because Karen had made one fatal mistake. She thought I was just another homeowner she could bury in fines. But I wasn't like the Millers. I wasn't like Mr. Henderson. I wasn't going to roll over. I was going to fight. And this time I wasn't just fighting for myself. I was fighting for everyone she had ever crushed. They called it a board meeting, but when I walked into that clubhouse, it felt more like stepping into a rigged trial. The air smelled faintly of burnt coffee and mildew, the kind of smell that clung to old carpet and cheap folding chairs. At the front of the room was a long table draped with a wrinkled purple cloth, and in the center sat Karen. She looked like a queen in her throne, chin high, lips thin, eyes sharp as glass. On either side of her were her loyal subjects, Martha wringing her hands and looking like she might faint, Bob, who looked half asleep even with his eyes open, and Gary, smug in his golf shirt, nodding before Karen even spoke. Her son stood against the back wall, arms crossed, trying to look menacing but mostly looking bored. And scattered across the room were the residents. Some came for their own petty grievances. Others came because they had nowhere else to be, but all of them carried the same look, resignation, as if this was Karen's theater and they were just here to watch her latest performance. I walked in with my briefcase, my heart hammering a steady rhythm against my ribs, but I kept my face calm. Sarah had wanted to come with me, but I told her no. This was my fight. I sat in the front row, my briefcase resting at my feet, and waited. For 20 long minutes, Karen droned on about landscaping budgets, parade planning, and pool maintenance. It was all filler. My legs bounced with impatience, but I kept my expression unreadable. She was drawing it out, savoring the moment, waiting to drag me into the spotlight. Finally, she smiled. "Next on the agenda," she said, her voice carrying that smug satisfaction, "is the appeal of Mr. Michael Turner regarding violations at 112 Oak Drive." She looked straight at me. "Mr. Turner, you have been fined for 3 serious violations of our community standards. Do you have anything to say for yourself before the board votes to uphold these fines?" There it was, her stage, her script. She wanted me to beg, to squirm, to break. I stood slowly, picked up my briefcase, walked to the small lectern at the front of the room. Every eye followed me. My blood burned hot in my veins, but my movements were cold, deliberate. "Yes, Karen," I said, my voice quiet but strong enough to cut through the silence. "I do have a few things to say." I refused to call her president. She was just Karen. Her smile widened, smug as ever. "The floor is yours." I clicked open my briefcase, pulled out the first plastic sleeve, a photograph, a high-resolution still from my video, Karen's hand, her manicured nails, ripping the orange sticker from my fence. I held it high for everyone to see. "This," I said, "was taken 2 days ago. It shows Karen personally destroying the court-ordered notices she is now fining me for not displaying. So I have to ask, am I being fined because the signs were there, or because she decided to tear them down?" A murmur rippled through the crowd. Martha's face went pale. Bob blinked awake. Even Gary shifted uncomfortably in his chair. "That is not what happened," Karen snapped, her voice tight. "I was removing non-compliant materials." "Non-compliant?" I let the word drip with sarcasm. "Interesting choice, because that brings me to my next point." I pulled out the second sleeve, a notarized copy of the judge's final order. I read it aloud, my voice steady. "The defendant, Mr. Turner, is hereby ordered to erect a fence on the surveyed property line and to post notices provided by the court on said fence for no less than 90 days. I raised my eyes, sweeping across the room. "So, Karen fined me $500 for installing a fence that a judge ordered me to build. She fined me another 500 for signs the judge ordered me to post. Signs she herself removed. That's not enforcement of bylaws, that's contempt of court. Silence, heavy and sharp. You could have heard the hum of the old fluorescent lights above us. Karen's face flushed red. The bylaws, she started. The bylaws, I cut her off, do not supersede state law. They do not outrank a county judge. Do you really believe your little rulebook is above the law of this state? My voice rose, sharp and cutting. Or is it that you think you're above the law? Karen's lips trembled with rage. She slammed her palm on the table. This is outrageous. You're out of order. I laughed, a short, sharp sound. No, Karen, I'm just the first person in 10 years who's had the spine to stand up to you. I turned to the board, locking eyes with each one of them. If you uphold these fines, you are complicit, every single one of you. You're not enforcing rules, you're enabling harassment, you're covering for contempt of court. Martha looked down at her hands, her shoulders shaking. Bob wiped sweat from his forehead. Even Gary's smug grin faltered. I snapped my briefcase shut. This isn't an appeal, I said, my voice low and hard. This is a warning. Drop the fines or be prepared to answer for them in a real courtroom. I turned and walked toward the door. Behind me, I heard her voice, venomous and cold. You will regret this, Mr. Turner. This is far from over. I paused, hand on the doorknob, and let a smile creep across my face. No, Karen, I said softly, not even bothering to look back. You're the one who's going to regret this. I stepped into the cool night air, my heart pounding, my body buzzing with adrenaline. The war wasn't over. No, this was only the beginning. And Karen, she had no idea the storm she had just unleashed. I thought her next move would be more fines. Maybe another letter in my mailbox. Maybe some petty punishment like banning me from the cracked tennis court or the murky community pool. That would have been her style, death by 1,000 paper cuts. But Karen didn't just want to hurt me. She wanted to destroy me. A week after the board meeting, there was a knock at my door. A man in a cheap suit stood on my porch, his face pockmarked, his expression sour. He didn't say a word. He just handed me a thick manila envelope and walked away. I knew what it was before I even opened it. My stomach dropped at the weight in my hands. I tore it open right there on the porch. The words at the top hit me like a hammer. Civil summons. Karen, on behalf of the Lakeside Meadows HOA, was suing me. The claims were insane, a work of pure fiction. Defamation of character because of what I said at the board meeting. Diminishing property values because my fence was aesthetically displeasing. Emotional distress because she couldn't stand to be challenged. And the kicker, she wanted the original judge's order overturned. She was asking the court to tear down my fence, erase my victory, and brand me a liar. This wasn't a small claim squabble. This was superior court. This was the kind of case that could bleed me for years, cost tens of thousands in fees, and ruin me completely. For the first time since this war began, I felt real fear. I sank down onto the porch steps, the sun shining, birds chirping in the oak tree overhead. But the world felt gray, heavy. She had me cornered. This was no longer about grass or stickers. This was about survival. Vinny saw me sitting there, envelope in my lap, and shuffled over with a beer in hand. He glanced at the papers, then shook his head. Oh, that's the I'm gonna ruin your life envelope. The Delvios got one of those back in '08. What happened to them? I asked, my voice hollow. They wanted a satellite dish. Karen said no, they did it anyway. She sued, drained their savings. They sold the house just to pay the lawyers. Guess who bought it through a holding company? Karen. Rents it out now. He took a sip of beer and sighed. She doesn't just want to win, kid, she wants to own you. His words should have broken me. Instead, they lit a spark. Own me, I muttered. No, not this time. Because suddenly I saw the bigger picture. The constant lawsuits. The endless special assessments for projects that never seemed to happen. The way she wielded HOA money like a personal weapon. This wasn't just power. This was business. And that meant one thing, money. The lawsuit gave me something she never expected, an opening. Discovery. a legal right to demand records to peel back every layer of her empire. She thought she was dragging me into a fight I couldn't afford. She had no idea she'd just handed me the key to her own vault. That night I called Dave, my lawyer. I laid it all out, the fines, the board meeting, the lawsuit. He listened quietly, then sighed. "Michael, this is bad. It's a slap suit. Strategic lawsuit against public participation, designed to shut you up. It's frivolous, sure, but she can drag it out, bleed you dry." I swallowed. "So what's our move?" "The smart move," he said. "Settle. I can probably negotiate a walk away. She drops the suit, you agree not to pursue her fines or harassment. Clean break, cheap, safe." I thought about Sarah, about her tired eyes after 12-hour shifts, the way she worried. She would want me to take the deal. It would mean peace, safety. But I thought about the Millers, about Mr. Henderson, about every neighbor she had bullied into silence, and I realized settling wasn't peace, it was surrender. "No," I said finally. My voice was quiet but solid. "No settlement." Dave was silent for a moment, then he chuckled. "Michael, think about this. You're betting your savings and your sanity." "I know, but this isn't about me anymore. I want everything, 10 years of board minutes, every contract, every bank record, every canceled check, and especially her books." There was a pause, then Dave's voice changed. The weary tone of a lawyer gave way to something else, excitement. "You think she's been cooking them?" "I think she's been feasting on them," I said. He let out a low whistle. "All right, you want to go hunting? Let's go hunting. I'll file the counterclaim tomorrow. Buckle up. This is going to get ugly." When I hung up the phone, the fear was gone, replaced by clarity. Karen thought she had unleashed her nuclear option. She didn't realize she'd just declared total war. The battlefield wasn't her lawn anymore. It wasn't my fence. It was every receipt, every contract, every hidden dollar she thought no one would ever question. And I wasn't just fighting for myself. I was about to drag Karen across the line she had crossed for years, out of the shadows into the light of a courtroom. The hunt was on. They say wars are fought with guns and bombs, but this one was fought with paper. When Judge Wallace, yes, the same judge who had handed me my first victory, ordered Karen and the HOA to produce every financial document for the last decade, they tried to bury me. 12 massive bankers' boxes arrived at Dave's office. 10 years of statements, invoices, receipts, ledgers. It was an avalanche, an intentionally disorganized mess meant to overwhelm me, to make me give up. They thought it would crush me, but what they didn't know was that my mind thrived on order. Where they saw chaos, I saw a puzzle. I turned my dining room into a war room, boxes stacked against the walls, the table covered in binders, spreadsheets, and color-coded sticky notes. My mechanical side, the part of me that loved engines and clear systems, clicked into overdrive. Every night after Sarah came home from a 12-hour shift, she would trade her scrubs for sweats, pour herself coffee, and sit down beside me. She had a nurse's eye, sharp, detail-oriented, trained to catch things others overlooked. And she became my partner in the trenches. "Look at this," she said one night, pointing to an invoice. $5,000 to Evergreen Landscaping, but the invoice number's handwritten, no address. Another night, consulting fees, same company, Prestige Property Management, but no phone number, no contact person. Over and over, we found payments just small enough to slip under the radar. A few thousand here, a few thousand there, month after month, year after year. It was death by 1,000 cuts, siphoning money straight from the community's bank account. The residents paid their dues. Karen pocketed the difference. The nights blurred together, coffee cups stacked in the sink. Sarah rubbing her temples, me fighting sleep to cross-check ledgers. Sometimes she'd look at me and whisper, "Michael, this is insane. Normal people don't do this." And I'd whisper back, "She's not normal, she's a predator." But no matter how much we uncovered, something still nagged at me. Prestige Property Management. Who were they? No address, no website, no trace. It was like chasing a ghost. The breakthrough came in the unlikeliest way. It was a Saturday afternoon. I stepped outside to clear my head and found Vinny struggling with a new lawn ornament, a hideous cast iron jockey painted in garish colors. I grabbed a wrench and helped him bolt it down. Prestige, I muttered, half to myself. Prestige property management, it's like it doesn't exist. Vinny froze, his brow furrowing. Prestige, he tapped his temple. That sounds familiar. Back when Karen got that fancy SUV maybe 6-7 years ago, there was a truck parked at her place all the time. Some contractor, plumbing and home repairs, Prestige something. Prestige Home Solutions, I think. My heart skipped a beat. A different name, but the same word, Prestige. You sure? I pressed. Sure as I'm sure this jockey's pants are too tight, Vinny said, patting the statue's ridiculous trousers. Saw it nearly every day. I thanked him, bolted inside, and fired up my laptop. My fingers flew across the state's corporate filings database. I searched Prestige Home Solutions. And there it was, a registered LLC. The owner's name jumped out at me. Not Karen Johnson, the name we all knew, but another one, Karen's maiden name, Karen Sikorsky. I just sat there, staring at the screen, my chest tight with triumph. Sarah, I shouted, get in here. She rushed over, wiping her hands on a dish towel. I pointed at the monitor. Her eyes widened. It was the smoking gun. Karen had created a shell company under her maiden name. For years, she'd been funneling HOA money into it, disguised as payments to a vendor. From there, it branched out. SUV payments, vacations, cash withdrawals. She hadn't even bothered to hide it well. Her arrogance was breathtaking. She was stealing in plain sight. My hands trembled as I printed the corporate filing. The page felt heavy in my grip, like a death warrant. We had her. This wasn't just civil fraud anymore. This was embezzlement, wire fraud, felony territory. For the first time in months, the exhaustion fell away. I felt pure adrenaline, a thrill so sharp it almost hurt. We had just shifted the battlefield. Karen thought she was suing me for offense. In reality, she had just handed me the keys to her prison cell. But Dave, ever cautious, told me to wait. Don't fire your biggest cannon yet, he warned over the phone. We have her, but let's make sure we have everything. Reluctantly, I agreed. The hot-headed part of me wanted to see flashing lights outside her house that very night, but the methodical part knew better. The deeper we dug, the worse it would get. And it did. We subpoenaed the bank records tied to Prestige Home Solutions. What we found made my stomach turn. The HOA's money was paying for everything, her SUV, her vacations, even a luxury apartment downtown, an apartment she didn't live in. The lease, it was in Chad's name. Karen's son wasn't just muscle. He was a beneficiary, living large in a downtown penthouse paid for by stolen HOA dues. That discovery alone could have destroyed them, but then came the twist. Because when Frank, Dave's investigator, pulled Chad's background, he found something buried. A sealed juvenile record. With some legal maneuvering, we cracked it open. It was check fraud. Chad had been running scams since high school. This wasn't new to him. He was part of her operation, a willing accomplice. And just when I thought I'd seen it all, we uncovered something buried deep in the HOA's email archives. An exchange between Karen and her younger son, Brad, back when he briefly served as HOA secretary. Mom, Brad had written timidly, I was going over the budget and can't find a contract for Prestige Property Management. The fees seem high. Could you send me the paperwork? Karen's reply was brutal. That is a legacy contract handled directly by the president's office. It does not concern you. Please focus on the minutes. Brad had pushed back. I feel I should have a record of all expenditures for transparency. Her final email was venomous. You will do as you're told. Do not question me again. This is your only warning. Drop it. I read that chain 3 times. Chad was a crook. Karen was the mastermind. But Brad had questioned it. He had tried to raise the red flag, only to be crushed under his mother's iron fist. He wasn't just a pawn, he was a witness, maybe even the key to ending it all. The paper war had given me proof of fraud, but now I realized something far more dangerous. This wasn't just about evidence anymore. This was about psychology. Because if I could turn Brad against his own mother, I could dismantle her empire from the inside. The only question was, how do you convince a son to burn down his own family to save himself? The plan to turn Brad wasn't just risky, it was dangerous. One wrong move and he'd run straight back to his mother. If that happened, everything we had built, the months of digging, the evidence, the paper trail, it would all go up in smoke. Karen would slam the door shut, double down, and bury us. But I couldn't ignore the email exchange I had read again and again. Brad wasn't like his brother. He wasn't blindly loyal. He had questioned the payments. He had seen the red flags, and somewhere deep inside he had a conscience. I just had to find it. Frank, our investigator, dug into Brad's routine. That's when he discovered something surprising. Every Wednesday night, Brad drove 20 minutes across town to a public basketball court. No friends, no family, just him, a ball, and the rhythm of free throws under the lights. It was his escape. And if I was going to reach him, it had to be there. Neutral ground. No HOA, no Karen breathing down his neck, just a court, a bench, and the truth. The night I went, my stomach was a knot of nerves. The closer I got to the park, the louder that knot seemed to twist. I wasn't a lawyer, I wasn't a detective, I was just a guy with a grudge and a folder of evidence. But I knew I couldn't back down, not now. I parked my car, walked across the cracked asphalt, and saw him. Brad was at the free throw line, methodical, the ball thudding against the pavement in steady rhythm. He looked normal, a kid in a hoodie chasing some peace. I waited until he paused for water, then I spoke. "Brad." He spun, startled. His eyes widened when he saw me. His first reaction was hostility. "What the hell, are you following me?" "No," I lied smoothly, holding my hands up. "I come here sometimes, didn't expect to see you." Suspicion burned in his eyes. His shoulders stiffened. "I'm not here to fight," I said quickly. "I just want to talk, 5 minutes, that's it. What I have to say, it's for your own good." He hesitated, looked around, saw we were alone. After a long pause, he nodded once. 5 minutes. I pulled a thin folder from my jacket. Slowly, carefully, I opened it and showed him the first page, the corporate filing for Prestige Home Solutions. His mother's maiden name, clear as day. He blinked, his face went pale. "This is your mother's company," I said. My voice was steady but soft. "She's been funneling HOA money into it for years." I flipped to the next sheet. Bank statements. Payments flowing in, branching out into vacations, cars, and finally, the lease for a luxury apartment downtown. "Your brother," I said, "paid for with stolen money, money from your neighbors, people like the Millers, people like Mr. Henderson." Brad's mouth opened, then closed. He sat heavily on the bench, his water bottle slipping from his hand. His voice was barely a whisper. I knew something was wrong. I didn't let him linger. I pulled out the last paper, the email chain. His own words asking about Prestige. His mother's reply, cruel and sharp, "Drop it. This is your only warning." "She didn't just lie to you," I said gently. "She threatened you, she used you." His head dropped into his hands. I could see the war raging inside him, family loyalty against the ugly truth. "Right now," I continued, "the district attorney is looking at this. It's not about if your mom and Chad go down, it's about when. And when they do, they'll drag you with them. They'll say you knew, that you were part of it. Your name will be tied to their crimes forever." He looked up at me, his eyes wide and full of fear. "What do you want from me?" he whispered. "This," I said. "A choice. The choice your mother never gave you. You can protect them and go down with the ship, or you can stand up, tell the truth, and save yourself." The silence stretched long. The only sound was the faint squeak of the rim as the wind pushed the net. His jaw clenched, his eyes squeezed shut. Finally, he let out a long, shuddering breath. Then he nodded. "Okay," he said, his voice cracked, but it was steady enough. "I'll talk." The relief hit me so hard I almost sagged with it, but I kept my face calm. "Good," I said simply. "You'll do the right thing, and when this breaks wide open, you'll be on the side of truth, not the side that burns." That night, I drove home with the folder still on the seat beside me, but it didn't feel like paper anymore. It felt like dynamite. The board meetings, the fines, the stickers, They all seemed small now, because in one conversation I had just turned Karen's own son against her. And if there's one thing tyrants can't survive, it's betrayal from within. The countdown had begun. The courthouse was colder than I remembered. Sterile walls, hard benches, the faint smell of old paper and burnt coffee lingering in the air. But what made it feel colder wasn't the room itself. It was the knowledge of what was about to happen inside it. This was the preliminary hearing for Karen's lawsuit against me. She thought today was the day she'd win an injunction, the day the judge would order my fence torn down, the day she would begin dismantling my life. She thought this was her moment of triumph. But really, it was her execution. She walked in flanked by Chad and her slick lawyer, her blonde helmet of hair sprayed into perfection. She looked confident, smug, even waved at a couple of neighbors in the gallery as if she were greeting her audience before a performance. Chad lumbered behind her, puffed up and scowling. Brad trailed after them, quiet, pale. She didn't even notice the way his eyes kept darting toward me from the back row. When Judge Wallace entered and the courtroom rose, I felt my pulse hammering. This was it. Months of paperwork, sleepless nights, and fragile hope all led to this one room. Karen's lawyer was just opening his mouth when Dave, my lawyer, stood. "Your Honor, before we begin, we have new information relevant to this case." Karen's head whipped toward him, her smile faltering. "First," Dave said, his voice clear and strong, "we have a new witness who has come forward with testimony about the financial operations of the Lakeside Meadows HOA. He is present in the courtroom today. His name is Brad Johnson." There was a ripple through the gallery. Karen's face drained of color. She turned, searching, and there he was, Brad standing slowly, his hands trembling but his chin lifted. The look on Karen's face, I will never forget it. Pure disbelief, betrayal carved into every line. "You," she whispered, her voice raw. "No." Brad swallowed hard, but he nodded. "Yes, Mom." The courtroom seemed to freeze. For years, Karen had ruled with fear and fines. But in that moment in front of the whole world, her own son had stepped out of her shadow. Karen lurched to her feet. "You traitor!" she spat, pointing a shaking finger at him, her voice cracked, too high, too shrill. "You ungrateful little." "Order," Judge Wallace snapped, hammering her gavel. But Dave wasn't finished. He adjusted his glasses, his tone calm and devastating. "And second, Your Honor, as of 9 o'clock this morning, we have turned over our findings to the District Attorney's Economic Crimes Division. A formal criminal investigation into Karen and Chad Johnson for felony embezzlement and fraud is now open." It was like dropping a bomb in the middle of the room. The gallery erupted, gasps, whispers, people craning forward. Karen staggered, her face twisting, her lips moving without sound. Then a guttural noise tore from her throat, half scream, half sob. "You," she shrieked, her eyes burning into Brad. "You did this, you destroyed us." But the chaos wasn't finished. Because Chad, finally realizing something was very, very wrong, snapped. His face went purple. He bellowed my name, and before anyone could react, he lunged. He barreled across the aisle, fists swinging, a roaring beast of pure rage. I braced, but the bailiffs were faster. They slammed into him, dragging him down, his curses filling the air. He thrashed, kicked, screamed, but he was finished. Just another broken thug on the courtroom floor. Judge Wallace's gavel thundered again and again. "Order, order." Karen collapsed back into her chair, sobbing incoherent. Her lawyer stood frozen, his mouth open, watching his entire case implode. And me, I just stood there, calm in the storm, my hands clenched on the lectern. For months, she had tried to break me. And now, in the space of a few minutes, she was the one broken, her empire collapsing piece by piece. I caught Brad's eye across the chaos. He gave me a tiny nod, not a nod of victory, not even relief, just grim necessity. The choice had been made, and there was no going back. By the time the gavel's echo faded, it was over. The lawsuit was dismissed with prejudice. Karen would never be able to refile, and the DA's office moved fast. That same afternoon, police cars rolled down Lakeside Meadows, prim little streets. Neighbors peeked through curtains as officers marched up to Karen's door. Cameras flashed as she was led away in handcuffs, her perfect blonde hair disheveled, her eyes wild. Chad, still bruised from his outburst, was arrested too. On top of fraud, he now faced charges for assault in a courtroom. The news spread like wildfire. The tyrant queen of Lakeside Meadows was dethroned. And for the first time in years, the neighborhood felt the stirrings of freedom. But as I sat in my car outside the courthouse, the papers still clutched in my hands, I felt something deeper. This wasn't just about me. It was never just about my fence or my stickers or those 3 feet of grass. It was about every single person she had ever crushed. And today, finally, she had been crushed instead. The days after Karen's arrest felt strangely quiet, not the silence of fear, the kind we'd all grown used to, but something else, something lighter. The streets of Lakeside Meadows seemed different. Neighbors who used to avoid eye contact now stopped at their mailboxes to chat. Laughter carried across the cul-de-sacs again. Even the air seemed cleaner, as if the neighborhood itself had exhaled after years of being strangled. Karen and Chad were gone, locked away behind bars while the DA built the case. Their mugshots flashed across local news. Karen's mascara streaked from tears, Chad's face swollen with rage. The once untouchable rulers of our little kingdom reduced to nothing more than criminals in orange jumpsuits. But even in victory, I didn't feel triumph. Not really. What I felt was exhaustion. One night, weeks later, I sat on my porch with Sarah. The cicadas hummed in the trees, the summer air warm and thick. She leaned against me, her hand wrapped around mine, her head on my shoulder. For the first time in what felt like forever, I let myself just breathe. "You did it," she whispered. "No," I said softly, "we did it." She smiled faintly. "Still doesn't feel real." I stared out at the fence, the same one that had started it all. The stickers were still there, weathered now, but still clinging to the wood. And I thought about how something so small, so ridiculous, had set fire to the whole neighborhood. But maybe it wasn't ridiculous at all. Because those stickers weren't just paper and ink. They were law, truth, proof that no matter how powerful someone thought they were, the rules still applied. Karen had ripped them off my fence thinking she could erase them, erase me. And in the end, those same stickers had marked her downfall. Sometimes karma doesn't arrive in thunderclaps or explosions. Sometimes it arrives as something ordinary, a slip of paper, a signature, a sticker on a fence. And if you're arrogant enough to tear them down, karma has a way of tearing you down instead. The HOA board was dissolved shortly after the arrests. The county stepped in, ordered a full audit, and froze the HOA's bank account. It turned out Karen had bled the community for almost $500,000 over the years. Vacations, luxury cars, the downtown apartment, all of it bought with stolen dues. But when the dust settled, something unexpected happened. The neighbors, instead of fighting, came together. Martha, once Karen's timid ally, started organizing potlucks and yard sales. Bob, the sleepy board member, volunteered to repaint the community benches. Even Vinny, with his lawn ornaments, helped mow Mrs. Henderson's yard for free. It was as if, in losing our tyrant, we had found our community again. And Brad, he wasn't celebrated. He wasn't condemned either. People looked at him differently, but they didn't shun him. In the end, he'd chosen truth. He stood against his own mother in the hardest way possible, and for that he earned something rare in Lakeside Meadows: forgiveness. One Saturday, months after the dust had settled, I saw him at the basketball court again. He waved me over. "Still angry?" I asked him. He shook his head. "No, just sad." I nodded. Sad is better than blind. He bounced the ball, his face serious. "Thanks for giving me a way out." I thought about what he'd said long after I drove home. Because in the end, that was what this whole fight had been about. Not revenge, not even justice. It was about freedom. Freedom from fear, from silence, from being told by one person how to live, what to plant, where to park, even what truth we were allowed to see. The night before Karen's sentencing, I stood in my yard under the stars, staring at the fence one last time. The stickers were peeling at the edges, but I didn't replace them. I left them there as long as the court required faded symbols of everything we had been through. And when the 90 days ended, I walked out with Sarah by my side, peeled them off one by one, and burned them in the fire pit. Not out of defiance, not out of anger, but because that chapter was closed. The next morning, I watched the news. Karen had been sentenced to 6 years in prison. Chad got 4. The judge called their crimes a betrayal of trust at the most basic level of community. I turned off the TV and poured myself a cup of coffee. No cheers, no parades, just peace. That was enough. Because sometimes the greatest victory isn't in watching your enemy fall. It's in finally being able to stand tall yourself. And as the smoke of those old stickers drifted into the summer sky, I realized something I'd carry for the rest of my life. Power doesn't come from rules written in a book. It doesn't come from threats or fines or even fear. Real power comes from the truth. And once the truth is set free, no one, not even an HOA queen named Karen, can ever tear it down again.